The next Lord of the Rings illustration is the letter F. F is for Fangorn. I'm in a Lord of the Rings mood lately, and I really wanted to continue my alphabet-inspired set. Fangorn is the name of the forest of the Ents, and is also the name of the leader of the Ent, or the oldest of the Ents. An Ent in The Lord of the Rings is a gigantic tree herder. They look like trees, but they can walk around. They show up in the movies and in the Rings of Power TV show too. It's cool that on the Rings of Power you see the female Ents, because in Lord of the Rings the male Ents say that they lost them. Like they don't know where the women Ents are, and it's been that way for many years. But since the Rings of Power story happens way before in the timeline, way before the Lord of the Rings, the women Ents are there, and I just thought it was a nice touch that they added them. Well, at least one. There's 2 Ents. And also I liked her design. She's a tree and had these beautiful small flowers. There are some beautiful shots with her and the elf Arondir. I started this piece in pencil on mixed media paper. I used a toned paper since I knew in my head that I wanted to paint a night scene. I went with a generic Ent. I didn't try to paint one of the actual Ent characters of the books or movies. In the book, when Merry and Pippin, the hobbits, go into the forest, they see a tree in a rock. They don't know it's an Ent yet, so I just referenced that in my head. That's why I added the Ent on the rock standing in the night. At least that's what I remember. I reread them a while ago. I hope I'm not misremembering, but I may be. My point is that that's where I got the idea for the composition. You know, when you read books and you see images in your head, some of them just stay with you. For some reason, I felt like adding more of a background to this one. My previous illustrations with the vignette are always focused on the characters. But this time I felt like I had to paint not only the character but also his surroundings. Probably because Fangorn stands for the forest too, so I felt it needed to be included. Especially since it's a generic Ent and not Fangorn himself. I had a lot of fun painting him. I really enjoyed doing all the small details. The wood texture, the branches. I started by painting the darks first. I went with a directional light source, so establishing the shadows first was a good way to show the form. I did the same for the branches in his head. After the application of the main color, I just moved on to painting in the shadow parts of them. I tried showing a lot of texture on the face of the Ent. It was fun because it's not following a regular face. I mean, the facial features are there, but they are lost in the bark. And if it's imperfect, they help convey the fact that it's a tree. It's meant to be a very organic and chaotic shape. It doesn't need to be symmetrical. You can be more loose, unlike when you draw an actual human face. Speaking of human faces and trees, how awful was that design in the Shadow of War video game? It's a Lord of the Rings video game, and it had a female ant on it. And it was like, she was a gigantic tree, but she had the face of a model, like a very beautiful woman face. Oh my god, she was made completely of bark texture, because she was meant to be like an ant. But she even had breasts, like the shape of her breasts. Oh my Lord of the Rings. Are trees mammals now? I think I read that one of the developers, or I'm not sure what title he had, one of the creators I guess, said that she wasn't supposed to be an ant. Anyways, it's a ridiculous design. The game is great though, it was really fun to play. I just didn't see that mammal tree coming. Especially that the cool thing about the ants is that they look like trees. They can really camouflage with the rest of the trees. Could I have done better? Probably not, but I am entitled to my complaining opinions. I did focus a lot on the textures of the ant, because it was fun. Perhaps I did too much, because I still had to get to the rest of the painting. And many of the small tree branches on the body would be painted over. I just didn't plan this illustration properly. I had to try and paint around the branches with the sky color. I also planned the trees in the background on 3 rows. The front row was supposed to have the most detail, then the mid row, which I'm painting in dark green to make it fall back, and then the farthest trees, which are meant to be darker, more silhouetted. But since I did the mistake of detailing some small branches, I had to try to paint around them. I did that for the most part, but there came a point where it was just easier to apply the opaque green for the background and then to bring back the branches later. When I painted the rock, it was fun to use the highlights to portray more of the rocky texture. I also added some warm tones on the rock. Then I reached a point where for the branches of the head, it was just easier to paint the sky in and then to repaint the branches. So yes, all the paint work I did in the beginning was gone. But since they are branches, it's not a big deal to go back and paint others. The only thing is that I really liked how they were turning out in the beginning. But it was easier to do this than to try and paint the sky in between the holes of the branches. What a nightmare. I added some leaf shapes with the brush strokes, and then I added some green color to make them more bushy in certain areas, and to show the directional lighting as well. I added some more blue in the bark of the ant too, to make him fit better with the sky color. Here's the finished piece. I like it, but I just feel like I could have done better on the background. Maybe even soften the edges of the trees in the far back. Yeah, the background has too many brush strokes that I could have just blended in better. Other than that, I do like the end. And here is with the text added on top. And like always, I added text using digital.